The forest whispered secrets that night, a symphony of rustling leaves and distant owl calls that seemed to warn me away from the deepening shadows. Cold autumn air pricked at my skin like tiny needles, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves mixed with something metallic and foreign, something that made my breath catch in my throat. Blood. My grandmother used to say that kindness was a lantern in the dark world, a belief I clung to despite everything I'd lost. The small wooden pendant she'd carved for me, a wolf howling at the moon, hung heavy against my chest as I ventured further than I should have, away from the safety of my isolated cabin. The forests of northern Maine were unforgiving at the best of times, but at night, they transformed into another realm entirely. The village 3 miles south had never truly accepted me. The strange girl who lives alone, they called me, with my too pale hair and my tendency to heal animals that most would consider beyond saving. Whispers followed me whenever I visited for supplies, how I was unnatural, possibly practicing forbidden arts. I wasn't, of course, just a veterinary student who'd abandoned her studies after the accident that took my parents, seeking solitude where judgment couldn't reach me. Or so I thought. "Hello?" I called softly, following the trail of disturbed underbrush. The metallic scent grew stronger, mixed now with musk and something wild. "Is someone hurt?" The silence that answered sent chills down my spine. I shouldn't be out here. Every instinct screamed for me to return to my cabin, to lock the door and forget whatever wounded creature lay ahead, but my grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. "Compassion isn't a choice, Eleanor. It's who you are." A low growl froze me in place. In the clearing ahead, illuminated by slashes of moonlight penetrating the canopy, lay the largest wolf I had ever seen. Its coat was midnight black, making it nearly invisible against the forest floor, except for the gleaming silver eyes that fixed on me with an intelligence that seemed almost human. Blood matted its left flank, and a cruel metal trap had mangled its hind leg. My heart thrashed against my ribs. This was no ordinary wolf. We didn't have wolves in this part of Maine, not for decades. Yet here was a specimen that seemed to have emerged from primeval times, its massive shoulders bunched as it watched me with those unnerving silver eyes. "Easy," I whispered, slowly lowering my pack to the ground. "I'm not going to hurt you." The wolf's lips curled back, revealing fangs that could easily tear through my throat, yet it made no move to attack, even as I cautiously removed my emergency veterinary kit. Instead, it observed me with an intensity that seemed to evaluate my very soul. I had treated wounded foxes, raccoons, even a young black bear cub once, but never a wolf, and certainly never one of this size or bearing. Its presence radiated power even in its injured state, like royalty fallen on the battlefield. "That trap is cruel," I said softly, filling a syringe with sedative as I spoke in what I hoped was a soothing tone. "I need to remove it and clean your wounds. This will help with the pain." The wolf's growl deepened, vibrating through the clearing. "I know you don't trust me," I continued, inching closer with painful slowness. "I wouldn't trust me either. But I can't leave you like this." Something shifted in those silver eyes. A calculation, perhaps, or resignation. The massive head lowered slightly, not in submission, but something closer to consent. "Thank you," I whispered, and the absurdity of thanking a wild animal almost made me laugh despite the tension. Working quickly, I administered the sedative, surprised at how little I needed to use to see the wolf's muscles begin to relax. Its breathing deepened, though those silver eyes never fully closed, watching me through half-lowered lids as I examined the cruel metal trap. The design was ancient, banned decades ago, something that should be in a museum, not mutilating wildlife. As I worked to disengage its merciless teeth from the wolf's flesh, I noticed strange markings etched into the metal, symbols I didn't recognize, curving and intertwining like a language from another time. "Who would do this to you?" I murmured, finally freeing the mangled limb. "And what are you doing in these woods?" The wolf's only response was a soft exhale as I cleaned and dressed the wound. The injury was severe, but with proper care, he might avoid permanent damage. What concerned me more was getting him back to my cabin. A creature this size must weigh at least 150 pounds, maybe more. As if reading my thoughts, a strange sensation washed over me. like someone had walked over my grave, as Grandma used to say. The air itself seemed to thicken, charged with an energy I couldn't name. The wolf's eyes fully closed at last, his massive body surrendering to the sedative. I would have to make a travois, drag him back somehow before he woke. Before whatever had set that ancient trap came looking for its prey. The journey back to my cabin was grueling. Every shadow seemed to watch us, every snapping twig a harbinger of danger. By the time I managed to drag the improvised stretcher up to my porch, sweat plastered my blonde hair to my forehead despite the autumn chill. My arms trembled from exertion, and a primal fear I couldn't name lingered at the edges of my consciousness. My cabin, once my parents' vacation home, now my permanent refuge, was small but sturdy. The main room served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A narrow hallway led to my bedroom and the bathroom, while a small room off the kitchen had been converted to my makeshift veterinary space. It was here that I somehow managed to heave the massive wolf onto the examination table, grateful that I'd reinforced it after the bear cub incident. Under the bright lights, the wolf's injuries looked even worse. The trap had torn through muscle and scraped bone, and there were other wounds I hadn't noticed in the forest. Claw marks across his shoulders, as though he'd fought something with formidable weapons of its own. "What happened to you out there?" I whispered, gathering my supplies. Outside, the wind picked up, howling around the cabin's eaves. Something crashed against my porch, and I jumped, heart racing. Just a fallen branch, I told myself. Just the storm. Hours passed as I worked, cleaning, stitching, wrapping. The wolf remained unnervingly still, save for the steady rise and fall of his massive chest. Occasionally his paws would twitch, and low rumbles would emerge from his throat. Dreaming, perhaps, of running through forests far from here. Dawn was breaking when I finally finished, washing blood from my hands in the small sink. I was exhausted, my back aching from hunching over the table for so long. The wolf would need time to heal, but I'd done everything I could for now. "You can stay until you're stronger," I told him, knowing he couldn't hear me. Though where I'll keep you, I have no idea. I'd need to construct some sort of enclosure, something that could contain a creature of his size and strength once he woke. The garden shed, perhaps, if I reinforced the door and windows. A sudden pounding at my front door sent a jolt of terror through me. No one visited me. No one. Wiping my hands dry, I crept to the window and peered through the curtain. 3 men stood on my porch, dressed in what looked like tactical gear despite the rugged wilderness setting. The one in front, tall, with a severe face and cold eyes, raised his fist to pound again. "Eleanor Thorne," he called, his voice carrying an accent I couldn't place. "We know you're in there. Open up." How did they know my name? I never used it in the village, going only by Ellie when forced to introduce myself. The leader turned to his companions, saying something I couldn't hear. One of them nodded and moved to circle around the cabin. My gaze darted to the wolf, still unconscious on my table. These men, could they be looking for him? The trap hadn't been set by accident. Someone had been hunting this wolf specifically, with those strange symbols etched into ancient metal. "Miss Thorne," the man called again, his tone hardening. "This is a matter of national security. You've taken something that doesn't belong to you." National security? What could a wolf, no matter how unusual, have to do with that? The wooden pendant seemed to burn against my skin, my grandmother's voice echoing in my mind. "Always trust your instincts, Eleanor. They know the truth before your mind can accept it." And my instincts were screaming that these men meant harm, to me and to the creature I'd saved. As if sensing my thoughts, the wolf's eyes snapped open, those silver irises locked with mine across the room, alert and aware despite the sedative that should have kept him unconscious for hours yet. A silent communication passed between us, an understanding I couldn't explain. The pounding at the door grew more insistent. "We're coming in, Miss Thorne. Stand aside." The wolf struggled to rise, muscles tensing beneath midnight fur. A low growl rumbled from his chest as he tried to stand on his injured leg, only to collapse back onto the table. "Don't," I whispered, moving quickly to his side. "You'll tear your stitches." Those silver eyes held mine, and in them I saw something impossible. Gratitude, yes, but also warning, protection. As if this injured predator was more concerned for my safety than his own. The sound of breaking glass came from the back of the cabin. The wolf's head snapped toward the noise, ears forward, body tense despite his injuries. I had seconds to decide what to do, who to trust. The authorities at my door, or the wild creature beneath my hands whose eyes held secrets I couldn't begin to fathom. My fingers found the wooden pendant at my throat, the carved wolf that had been my talisman since Grandma's passing. The decision was already made, I realized. Had been made the moment I found him in that clearing. "Hold on," I whispered to the wolf, reaching for the scalpel I'd left on the instrument tray. "We're going to get out of here." The back door splintered open, and the world as I knew it shattered with it. The moment stretched like a thread about to snap. Men shouting, boots pounding against my wooden floors, and the injured wolf struggling to stand despite his wounds. Without thinking, I grabbed my emergency bag and slung it across my body, then positioned myself between the advancing intruders and the wolf. "Step away from the animal, Miss Thorne." The leader had entered through my front door, his voice carrying the calm certainty of someone used to being obeyed. Up close, I could see the insignia on his tactical vest, a symbol I didn't recognize, like a stylized moon caught in thorny branches. "That creature is government property and highly dangerous. He's injured," I replied, gripping the scalpel tighter behind my back. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "And since when does the government claim ownership of wild animals?" The man's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. "That is no ordinary wolf, and I believe you already suspect as much." He was right. Everything about this wolf defied explanation. His size, his intelligence, the way those silver eyes seemed to understand every word we spoke. But government property, the very concept made my skin crawl. "He needs medical attention," I insisted. "The trap nearly severed his leg." "A regrettable necessity," replied the man, taking another step forward. "The sedative you've administered should make transport easy enough. We'll take it from here." Behind him, the other two men moved to flank me, cutting off any escape route. The wolf's growl deepened, his massive body trembling with the effort to stay upright. "You set that trap," I realized aloud, anger displacing fear. "Those symbols, what were they for? What are you really doing out here?" A flicker of surprise crossed the leader's face. "The symbols are none of your concern. Now step aside, or we'll be forced to remove you." The threat hung in the air between us. I glanced back at the wolf, whose silver eyes held a desperate intensity. In that moment of connection, something impossible happened. A voice, deep and commanding, echoed inside my mind. "Trust me," I gasped, nearly dropping the scalpel. The wolf's gaze never wavered. "When I move, run for the trees. Don't stop. Don't look back." I must be hallucinating. Stress, exhaustion, fear. Any of those could explain hearing voices. Yet the certainty that the wolf had somehow spoken to me settled in my bones like an undeniable truth. "Miss Thorne." The leader's hand moved to his holster. Final warning. Time seemed to slow. I watched his fingers close around his weapon, watched the other men tense in anticipation. And then, chaos. The wolf launched himself from the table with a speed that defied his injuries, a black blur of fur and fury. His massive body collided with the leader, sending both crashing into the wall. The other men shouted, reaching for their weapons, but the wolf was already turning, impossibly agile despite his wounded leg. "Now! Run!" I didn't question the voice this time. Slashing wildly with the scalpel to keep the closest man at bay, I bolted for the back door, which hung splintered on its hinges. Behind me came snarls, shouts, the sound of furniture breaking. My heart hammered against my ribs as I burst out into the gray dawn light, feet finding the narrow path that led deeper into the forest. The trees enveloped me, branches clawing at my clothes, roots threatening to trip me with every step. I had no plan beyond escape, no destination except away. The woods I thought I knew suddenly seemed vast and foreign, filled with shadows that might hide either sanctuary or doom. A gunshot cracked through the morning air, followed by another. I stumbled, terror seizing my chest. The wolf. Had they? Before I could complete the thought, something massive brushed past my legs. The wolf, running alongside me despite his injuries, his midnight coat ghosting through the underbrush. Relief flooded me, only to be quickly replaced by fresh fear as shouts echoed behind us. They were following. This way. The wolf veered left, away from the path, plunging into denser forest, where towering pines blocked most of the early light. I followed without hesitation. My lungs burning, legs growing heavier with each stride. How was he moving so fast with his injuries? How was he communicating with me? Questions whirled through my mind, unanswerable in our desperate flight. We ran until I could run no more, my legs finally buckling beneath me. I collapsed against the gnarled roots of an ancient oak, gasping for breath, the taste of copper coating my tongue. The wolf circled back, those silver eyes studying me with what seemed like concern. Rest. They've fallen behind. How? I wheezed, unable to form a complete sentence. How are you? In my head. The wolf's ears twitched forward, his head tilting slightly as if considering his answer. The connection was unexpected, but convenient. Under the circumstances, I pressed my hand against my forehead, checking for fever. This couldn't be happening. Wolves didn't talk, didn't communicate telepathically, didn't behave like this one had since the moment I found him. What are you? I finally managed. The wolf settled onto his haunches, wincing slightly as his injured leg touched the ground. That is complicated. Those men. I gestured vaguely in the direction we'd fled from. They called you government property. A rumble that might have been a laugh emanated from the wolf's chest. They would. The Silverthorn Containment Division has been hunting my kind for generations, seeking to control what they fear. Your kind? My voice rose higher than intended, and I quickly lowered it, painfully aware that we might still be pursued. There are more of you? Talking wolves? We are not merely wolves. Something in his mental voice shifted, growing more formal, almost regal. My name is Donovan Nightshade, Alpha King of the Eastern Territories, and what I am about to tell you will challenge everything you believe about your world. Eleanor Thorne. The way he said my full name sent shivers down my spine, as if he'd known it all along, not just heard it from the men at my cabin. As if he knew more about me than a stranger should. How do you know who I am? The pendant you wear. His gaze fixed on my grandmother's carved wolf. It bears the sigil of the Thorne bloodline, ancient allies to my people. It is no coincidence that you found me in those woods. I touched the pendant reflexively, remembering my grandmother's insistence that I never remove it. My grandmother carved this. It's just a trinket. Is that what she told you? The wolf, Donovan, shifted his weight, grimacing as he stretched his injured leg. Look closer at the markings on the back. With trembling fingers, I turned the pendant over. In the growing daylight, I could see tiny symbols etched into the wood. Symbols I'd always assumed were my grandmother's artistic flourishes. But now, after seeing the markings on that trap, they seemed suddenly, frighteningly familiar. Who was she? Who am I? My voice cracked on the question. Before he could answer, a distant sound caught our attention. Voices, faint but approaching. Donovan rose immediately, his body tense. We've lingered too long. Can you continue? I nodded, pushing myself up on shaking legs. Where are we going? To my people. There's a sanctuary about 7 miles northeast, hidden from human eyes, 7 miles through dense forest, with injured wolf and mysterious government agents in pursuit. The impossibility of our situation threatened to overwhelm me. Stay close, Donovan instructed, setting off at a pace I could manage. And Eleanor, what I'm about to ask will sound strange, but it's vital. That pendant, has it ever felt warm to you? Vibrated? Shown you visions? The question stopped me mid-stride. Those strange dreams I'd had since childhood. Wolves running through moonlit forests, ancient stone circles, faces that seemed half human and half beast. I'd always dismissed them as an overactive imagination, but the way Donovan asked, sometimes, I admitted, hurrying to catch up. I see things, dreams. I thought. A satisfaction emanated from him, not dreams, though his pace never slowed. Memories. The pendant is more than protection, it's a conduit. The Thorn women have always been seers for my kind. Seers. The word tasted foreign on my tongue. Like fortune tellers? His mental laugh rippled through my mind. Far more than that. Without the thorns, my people would have been extinct centuries ago. Your line has the rare ability to walk between worlds, to see threats before they manifest. We continued through the forest, every step taking us deeper into wilderness I'd never explored. The terrain grew rougher, dotted with massive boulders and steep ravines. Twice we had to backtrack to avoid impassable terrain, and all the while, the sounds of pursuit ebbed and flowed behind us like a malevolent tide. My mind reeled with questions, each more impossible than the last. If what Donovan said was true, if my grandmother had been some sort of mystical seer for a race of intelligent wolves, why had she never told me? Why let me believe I was ordinary? Just a lonely girl with strange dreams. As if sensing my thoughts, Donovan paused at the crest of a small rise. She was protecting you. Knowledge is dangerous, especially when the Silverthorn division is involved. Those men back there, I said, taking advantage of the brief rest to catch my breath. What do they want with you? With your people? Donovan's silver eyes darkened. Control, power. Our ability to shift between forms makes us valuable weapons in their eyes. Shift between... I froze, the implication hitting me like a physical blow. You mean you're not always a wolf? You can be... human, yes. His mental voice was careful, measuring my reaction, though shapeshifter would be more accurate. We are neither fully wolf nor fully human, but something older than both. The world tilted beneath my feet, reality rearranging itself around this impossible revelation. Werewolves. I had rescued a werewolf. No, according to him, I had rescued werewolf royalty. Why can't you shift now? I asked, gesturing to his injured form. Wouldn't it be easier to escape as a human? Donovan's ears flattened against his skull, his mental voice taking on a grim edge. The trap. Those symbols you noticed, they're binding runes. Ancient magic designed to lock shapeshifters in one form. Until they fade or are broken by someone with the right knowledge, I'm confined to wolf form, magic. I repeated faintly. Of course. Why not add that to today's impossibilities? A sound like a helicopter's distant thrum reached us, growing louder by the second. Donovan's head snapped up, ears pricked forward. They've called in air support. We need to find cover, now. We abandoned the ridge, plunging down into a ravine where a small stream cut through the forest floor. The overhanging trees provided some concealment from above, but the noise grew steadily louder, branches swaying with the downdraft as the helicopter circled nearby. They're going to find us, I gasped, ducking beneath a low-hanging pine bough. We can't outrun a helicopter. We don't need to outrun it. Donovan nudged me toward a tangle of fallen trees and exposed roots. We just need to reach the boundary. What boundary? Between your world and ours. Before I could ask what he meant, the helicopter sound abruptly intensified. Through gaps in the canopy, I caught glimpses of its black shape hovering directly above us, leaves and debris swirling in its artificial wind. There. Donovan indicated the shadowy space beneath the largest fallen tree, where tangled roots created a natural archway. Quickly. I hesitated only a moment before crawling into the space, Donovan following close behind. The earth here felt different somehow, vibrating with a subtle energy that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. The helicopter noise faded slightly, as if heard through water. What is this place? I whispered, though I wasn't sure why I bothered to speak aloud when he could hear my thoughts. The veil is thin here, came his reply. Hold the pendant and think of safety. Think of sanctuary. The wooden wolf seemed to pulse against my palm as I clutched it, warm and alive. The vibrations spread up my arm, resonating with something deep inside me that I hadn't known existed until this moment. The world around us blurred, colors shifting, sounds distorting. Donovan's silver eyes were the only constant in the swirling chaos, fixed on mine with fierce intensity. Don't let go, Eleanor. Whatever happens, don't let go. The ground beneath us seemed to dissolve, reality folding like paper as the boundary between worlds thinned to nothing, and then we were falling, but not falling. The sensation defied description, like being unmade and remade in the same breath, my body simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Colors swirled around us, sounds echoed from impossible distances, and through it all, Donovan's silver eyes remained locked with mine, anchoring me to sanity. "Hold on," his voice echoed in my mind, stronger now, as if the boundary crossing had strengthened our connection. The first transition is always the most disorienting. The wooden pendant burned against my palm, no longer merely warm but blazing with energy. Symbols etched into its surface glowed with golden light that seemed to seep into my skin, flowing through my veins like liquid sunshine. A distant part of me wondered if I should be terrified, but all I felt was a strange sense of homecoming, as if pieces of myself I hadn't known were missing had suddenly clicked into place. Then, with a jolt that knocked the breath from my lungs, we landed. Soft earth cushioned our fall. The scent of pine and something sweeter, moonflowers, my mind supplied, though I'd never encountered them before, filling my nostrils. I lay still for several heartbeats, afraid to open my eyes, afraid of what I might see. "You can look now, Eleanor," Donovan said, his voice no longer in my mind but in my ears. Deeper, richer, and undeniably human. I opened my eyes to a world transformed. We lay in a small clearing surrounded by ancient pines that stretched impossibly tall, their upper branches disappearing into mist. The ground beneath us was carpeted with moss and tiny white flowers that glowed with faint bioluminescence. But it was the sky that made me gasp, swirling with colors I had no names for, stars that pulsed like heartbeats, and 2 moons, one silver, one gold, hanging side by side where only one should be. "Where are we?" I whispered, struggling to sit up. "What happened to—" The words died in my throat as I turned to find not a wolf beside me, but a man. He knelt on one knee, watching me with those same silver eyes that had captured me in the forest. His face was all sharp angles and regal planes, framed by midnight hair that fell to broad shoulders. Despite his beauty, and he was beautiful, in a severe, dangerous way, what struck me most was his expression, a mixture of pain, relief, and something I couldn't quite name. "The binding runes," I managed, gesturing weakly to his now human form. "They've broken? The rules of your world don't fully apply here," he replied, his voice carrying the same commanding presence that had filled my mind earlier. He was dressed in what appeared to be leather armor, intricate silver symbols etched across the chest piece, symbols that matched those on my pendant. A royal blue cloak draped over one shoulder, clasped with a silver wolf's head brooch. Despite the formal attire, I couldn't help but notice he was barefoot, and a bandage wrapped around his left leg where the trap had caught him. "Crossing the boundary weakens their power," he continued, rising carefully to his feet and offering me his hand. "Though I'm not fully healed, I can at least shift forms now." I hesitated before taking his offered hand, suddenly, acutely aware of my disheveled appearance. Clothes dirty and torn from our flight through the forest, blonde hair tangled with leaves and twigs. His grip was warm and solid as he helped me stand, steadying me when my legs threatened to buckle. "Are we safe here?" I asked, looking around the ethereal clearing. From those men, the Silverthorn division, a shadow crossed Donovan's face. "Temporarily. The boundary keeps most humans out, but those with the right tools can breach it. We should reach the Haven before nightfall." "Haven?" "My people's sanctuary." He gestured toward a barely visible path leading deeper into the strange forest. "Can you walk? Your first crossing can leave you weak." As if his words had summoned it, a wave of dizziness washed over me. I swayed on my feet, and Donovan's arm immediately circled my waist, supporting me with surprising gentleness for one who radiated such power. "I'm okay," I insisted, though the world still tilted alarmingly. "Just give me a moment." He guided me to a fallen log at the edge of the clearing, helping me sit before kneeling to examine my scratched and bleeding feet. In our desperate escape, I hadn't noticed losing my shoes. "You've been extraordinarily brave, Eleanor Thorne," he said quietly, tearing strips from his cloak to bind the worst of my cuts. "Few humans would have helped a wounded wolf. Fewer still would have defied armed men to protect one, and almost none would have survived crossing the boundary with their sanity intact." His hands were surprisingly gentle as they wrapped the makeshift bandages around my feet, though I could feel calluses that spoke of weapons training and hard living. This was no pampered royal, despite his title. "I didn't know what I was doing," I admitted. "Any of it. I just couldn't let them take you." Donovan's silver eyes flicked up to meet mine, something like wonder crossing his features. "Instinct," he murmured, the Thorne bloodline asserting itself, even without knowledge. His gaze fell to the pendant still clutched in my hand. "Your grandmother never told you anything? About your heritage, your abilities?" I shook my head, memories of my quiet, kind grandmother washing over me. She'd been full of stories, folklore, and fairy tales that had captivated my childhood imagination, but nothing that hinted at this impossible reality. She used to say that our family had a special connection to the natural world, I recalled, that we were guardians of balance. I thought she meant we should recycle and use eco-friendly cleaning products. A surprised laugh escaped him, a warm, rich sound that transformed his severe features into something almost boyish. "A practical interpretation," he conceded, though somewhat understated. "What am I really, then?" I asked, needing to hear it directly. "If my grandmother was a seer for your people, what does that make me?" Donovan finished binding my foot and sat back on his heels, his expression growing solemn. "The Thorne women are more than seers, Eleanor. They're boundary walkers, rare humans who can traverse the spaces between worlds without losing themselves. They can see threats before they materialize, forge connections between minds, and, most importantly for my people, break binding spells, like the one on you?" I glanced at his injured leg, now human but still bandaged. He nodded. "The trap was specifically designed for me. The Silverthorn Division has been hunting alpha shapeshifters for decades, seeking to either control us or eliminate us entirely. But why? What threat do you pose?" "Power," he said simply. "Shapeshifters have always lived alongside humanity, mostly in secret. We're faster, stronger, more resilient. Some of us have additional gifts: telepathy, healing, elemental affinities. Throughout history, we've been both protectors and predators, depending on the alpha leading each pack." "And you?" I asked, studying his regal bearing. "What kind of alpha are you?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "One who believes in balance, in coexistence rather than dominance, which makes me dangerous to those who would use my people as weapons." He rose, offering his hand once more. "We should continue this discussion while moving. The haven is still several hours' journey." As we walked, Donovan explained more about this realm, the Between, he called it, a place existing in the overlap of human world and shapeshifter territory. Neither fully physical nor entirely spiritual, it served as both buffer and bridge between realities. Only those with Thorne blood or shapeshifter heritage could navigate it safely. Ordinary humans who stumbled in by accident often lost their minds, or emerged changed in fundamental ways. The forest around us grew stranger the deeper we ventured. Trees with bark like polished obsidian rose alongside others with luminescent leaves that chimed softly in the breeze. Creatures that resembled foxes, but with too many tails, darted across our path, while birds with feathers that shifted color with each wing beat observed us from swaying branches. "Your leg," I noted as we paused by a stream of water so clear it was nearly invisible. "It's healing faster than it should." Donovan knelt to drink, cupping the crystalline water in his hands. "Shapeshifter physiology," he explained. "We heal roughly 5 times faster than humans, and the Between accelerates that process." I joined him at the stream's edge, the cool water soothing my parched throat. "These men hunting you, will they follow us here?" His expression darkened. "They've developed technology to track shapeshifters across boundaries. It's how they found me in your world to begin with." He touched his injured leg reflexively. The trap contained a tracking device along with the binding runes, which I removed, I realized with a chill, and brought to my cabin. "Yes." His silver eyes held mine. "That's why they came for you so quickly." They've been monitoring boundary fluctuations for months, trying to locate our haven. Guilt crashed over me. I led them right to you. No. Donovan's voice was firm. You saved me, Eleanor. Without your intervention, I would have been captured or killed. His hand covered mine briefly where it rested on the stream's bank, and you've given us a chance to turn the tables. The Silverthorn Division doesn't know about you. They don't realize a boundary walker has awakened. I don't feel awake, I admitted. I feel lost. Yesterday I was just a reclusive ex-vet student hiding from the world. Today I'm apparently some mystical boundary walker with powers I don't understand, running through an impossible forest with the king of shapeshifters. A smile quirked the corner of his mouth. When you put it that way, it does sound rather overwhelming. Overwhelming doesn't begin to cover it. I stood, brushing dirt from my already filthy jeans. And I still don't understand why my grandmother never told me the truth. If this is my heritage, why keep it secret? Donovan rose beside me, his face growing solemn once more. Because knowledge of the boundary walkers has been systematically erased from human awareness. 25 years ago, the Silverthorn Division launched Operation Moonfall, a coordinated attack on every known Thorn descendant. Ice spread through my veins. What? Your family was hunted, Eleanor, just as mine has been. He began walking again, his stride more pronounced as he favored his injured leg. From what we pieced together afterward, your grandmother managed to escape with your mother, changing your family name and going into hiding. They were among the very few survivors. Memories flashed through my mind, moving frequently during my early childhood, my mother's insistence on using cash instead of credit cards, the way my grandmother would sometimes freeze at unexpected noises. I had attributed it all to eccentricity or anxiety, never imagining a darker reason. My parents died in a car accident when I was 19, I said, hurrying to keep pace with Donovan's longer strides. At least that's what I was told. Was it? I don't know, he admitted. But it would fit the pattern. The division is nothing if not patient. They've waited decades to find the last of the boundary walkers. We walked in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. The forest around us gradually transformed, the trees growing more orderly, the path more defined. Occasionally I caught glimpses of structures in the distance, stone archways or wooden platforms high among the branches, though no other people. We're nearing the outer boundaries of Haven territory, Donovan explained, as the path widened into a proper road paved with iridescent stones. You'll start to see sentries soon. As if summoned by his words, a figure materialized from the shadows ahead. A woman with copper-colored hair and amber eyes that gleamed with preternatural sharpness. She wore leather armor similar to Donovan's, though without the royal insignia, and a bow was strapped across her back. At the sight of us, her eyes widened, and she immediately dropped to one knee. "My king," she said, her voice steady despite her obvious shock. "We feared you lost when you didn't return from your scouting mission." "Rise, Sarah," Donovan commanded gently. "As you can see, I encountered complications." The woman, Sarah, rose gracefully, her gaze sweeping over me with undisguised curiosity and something less friendly. "A human? Here?" Her nostrils flared slightly. "Her scent is unusual." "Eleanor Thorne is under my protection," Donovan said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Alert the council that I've returned and bring Elias to the healing chambers immediately." "Thorne?" Sarah's amber eyes widened further, her hostility instantly replaced with awe. "A boundary walker? But they were all—" "Not all, apparently," Donovan cut her off. "Now go, and send additional patrols to the eastern crossing. The division breached the outer boundary and may attempt to follow us." Sarah bowed deeply, first to Donovan and then, to my surprise, to me. Without another word, she turned and sprinted down the path with inhuman speed, disappearing into the strange forest. "That will set tongues wagging," Donovan remarked dryly. "The Alpha King returns injured and accompanied by a legendary boundary walker. The Haven hasn't seen such excitement in decades. She seemed afraid when you mentioned the division," I noted as we resumed walking, the path now sloping gently upward. With good reason. 2 years ago, they breached our secondary sanctuary in the Western Territories. 37 of my people were captured, including children. His voice remained steady, but I could feel the rage simmering beneath his controlled exterior. We never found them. I'm sorry, I said softly, the inadequacy of the words burning in my throat. Donovan's silver eyes met mine. That is why your appearance now, when our situation grows most dire, seems like more than coincidence. The thorns have always emerged when the balance tips too far toward darkness. The weight of expectation in his words made my chest tighten. I don't know how to be what you need, I confessed. I don't know how to access these abilities you say I have. Yet you freed me from a binding trap, communicated telepathically, and crossed the boundary without training. He countered. Your blood remembers what your mind does not yet know. Before I could respond, we crested the hill, and I stopped short, breath catching at the sight before us. Haven. Haven wasn't a village or a town or even a city. It was something out of ancient myth. A place that shouldn't exist outside of dreams. Massive trees, larger than redwoods and glowing with inner light, had been shaped into living architecture. Spiraling staircases, arching bridges, and dwellings that seemed to grow organically from the branches. Stone structures rose among them, their surfaces etched with the same silvery symbols that adorned Donovan's armor and my pendant. Crystal spires caught the strange light of the double moons, refracting it into cascades of color that danced across the canopy. At the center of it all stood what could only be described as a palace. Part tree, part stone, part something else entirely, its tower stretching toward the impossible sky, while its roots plunged deep into the earth below. It's beautiful, I whispered, unable to fully process what I was seeing. How can this exist without humans knowing? The Between shields us, Donovan explained, a note of pride in his voice, and we've had centuries to perfect our concealment. He gestured toward the sprawling settlement. Haven is our last true sanctuary, home to over 3,000 shapeshifters from various packs and bloodlines. As we descended the path toward the city, I became aware of eyes watching from windows and doorways, curious faces appearing and then withdrawing as we passed. Word of our arrival had clearly spread quickly. Occasionally, someone would bow deeply or touch their forehead in what appeared to be a gesture of respect, not just to Donovan, but to me as well. They're staring at me, I murmured, self-consciousness washing over me anew. In my torn, dirty clothes and improvised bandages, I hardly looked like a mythical boundary walker. Many have never seen a thorn before, Donovan replied quietly. You're literally a legend come to life. A small crowd had gathered at the base of the hill, where the path widened into a proper road. As we approached, they parted silently, forming an aisle that led toward the central palace. Their expressions ranged from awe to skepticism to outright hope. Too many emotions for me to process in my exhausted state. An elderly man with a magnificent white beard stepped forward, leaning on a staff carved with symbols similar to those on my pendant. His eyes, a striking amber gold, widened at the sight of us. By the old moon, he breathed. It's true, a thorn walks among us once more. Donovan inclined his head slightly. Elder Elias, I trust Sarah delivered my message? Indeed, Your Majesty. The old man, Elias, bowed, though his gaze remained fixed on me with unsettling intensity. The healing chambers are prepared, and the council awaits your presence. He hesitated, then added, the division's breach of the eastern boundary has been confirmed. Our scouts report at least 12 operatives with boundary-crossing technology have entered the Between. A ripple of unease passed through the gathered crowd. Donovan's expression hardened, but he maintained his regal composure. Double the patrols and activate the inner wards, he commanded. No one enters or leaves Haven without my direct authorization. His hand touched my elbow lightly. Eleanor needs rest and care before we address the council. See to it that appropriate quarters are prepared near mine. Elias bowed again. Already done, Your Majesty. As we continued toward the palace, Donovan's fingertips remained at my elbow, a subtle pressure that somehow kept me grounded amid the overwhelming strangeness. The crowd followed at a respectful distance, whispers rising and falling like waves. Is it always like this? I asked quietly. The bowing and your majesty business? A hint of wry amusement crossed his face. More or less, though usually I'm not limping and accompanied by a legendary human sorceress. I'm not a sorceress, I protested automatically. No, he agreed. You're something far rarer and more valuable. The palace entrance loomed before us. Massive doors of living wood that seemed to breathe, their surfaces carved with scenes of wolves running beneath a full moon. They swung open at our approach, revealing a soaring atrium where sunlight filtered through crystal skylights, illuminating mosaics of multicolored stone on the floors. Servants, or what I assumed were servants, given their simpler clothing, appeared immediately, bowing deeply before leading us through a maze of corridors. The interior of the palace was an organic blend of natural elements and refined craftsmanship. Living wood grew alongside polished stone, while water features burbled softly in corner alcoves. We were shown to what Donovan informed me was the healing wing, a circular chamber with a domed ceiling painted to resemble the night sky. Several low beds lined the walls, but the room was otherwise empty, save for a central pool of steaming water that filled the air with herbal scents. Our healers will attend you shortly, said the young woman who had guided us, bowing once more before withdrawing. As soon as we were alone, Donovan's formal demeanor slipped slightly. He sank onto the edge of one of the beds, grimacing as he stretched his injured leg. You should have mentioned you were in pain, I said, crossing to his side. The veterinarian in me automatically reached for his bandaged leg, then hesitated. May I? He nodded, watching intently as I knelt to examine the wrappings. Your concern is unexpected. I treated you when you were a wolf, I reminded him, carefully unwinding the strips of cloth. Why would I stop caring just because you've changed shape? Most humans would find the concept unsettling at best. I shrugged, focusing on the wound beneath the bandages. Most humans haven't had the day I've had. After everything else, your ability to switch between forms seems almost reasonable. The injury looked better than I'd expected. The deep lacerations from the trap had already begun to close, new skin forming at the edges. Still, there was inflammation, and what looked like dark veins spreading outward from the wound site. This isn't healing like it should, I observed, gently probing the area, even accounting for your accelerated recovery. The binding runes, Donovan explained, his voice tight with suppressed pain. Their effects linger, slowing the healing process and preventing a full shift. I frowned, remembering the symbols etched into the trap. These runes, you said they need to be broken by someone with the right knowledge. You meant me, didn't you? A boundary walker. Yes. His silver eyes held mine. The Thorn bloodline has always been able to neutralize binding magic. It's one of the reasons the division hunted your family so aggressively. But I don't know how, I admitted, frustration building. Everyone keeps talking about these abilities I supposedly have, but no one's telling me how to use them. It is not something that can be taught through instruction alone, came a new voice from the doorway. The Thorn gifts awaken through necessity and intention. Elder Elias entered, accompanied by a younger woman carrying a tray of supplies. Unlike the Elder's formal robes, she wore a simple tunic and trousers, her dark hair braided tightly away from her face. Elder, Donovan acknowledged with a nod. This is Eleanor Thorn. Eleanor, Elder Elias is our most knowledgeable historian and a former advisor to my father. Elias approached, his amber eyes still studying me with that unnerving intensity. I have waited a very long time to meet a Thorn, he said, his voice carrying the weight of decades. We had feared your line extinct. So I've been told, I replied, suddenly self-conscious about kneeling at Donovan's feet. I rose quickly, wiping my hands on my dirty jeans. Though I still don't understand why my grandmother kept all of this from me. Protection through ignorance, Elias said, gesturing for the young woman to set her tray beside Donovan's bed. If you did not know what you were, your abilities would remain dormant, making you harder for the division to track. And now? Now you have awakened, at least partially. Elias nodded toward my pendant. The crossing triggered your latent gifts, though they remain largely untapped. The young woman, a healer I presumed, began examining Donovan's wound with practiced efficiency. Her hands moved over the injury, a faint blue light emanating from her fingertips. "Binding residue," she reported, glancing at Elias. "Deep in the tissue. I can treat the physical damage, but the magical constraint remains." Elias turned to me. "This is where you come in, young Thorn. Only you can break the binding completely. But how?" I asked, frustration leaking into my voice. "Everyone keeps saying I have these abilities, but no one will tell me how to use them. Because it is not about technique," Elias replied patiently. "It is about intention and connection. The Thorns do not cast spells or recite incantations. Their power comes from within, from their unique relationship to the boundaries between worlds. That's not helpful," I muttered. Donovan's low chuckle surprised me. "She has a point, Elder. Perhaps something more concrete would be beneficial." Elias sighed, stroking his beard. "Very well. The pendant, child. It is not merely a trinket, but a focus. It has been imbued with the essence of your bloodline's gifts. Hold it, and place your other hand over the king's wound. Then close your eyes and visualize the binding. See it as chains or ropes or whatever form makes sense to you, and will it to break." It sounded absurdly simple, like something from a children's fantasy novel. But I'd already crossed between worlds and communicated telepathically with a shapeshifter king. Was this really any stranger? I knelt beside Donovan once more, the healer moving aside to give me room. The wooden pendant felt warm against my palm as I clutched it, my other hand hovering tentatively over Donovan's injured leg. "May I?" I asked again, suddenly aware of how intimate this felt. His silver eyes had darkened to the color of storm clouds. "Please." My hand settled gently on his skin, which felt fever-hot to the touch. I closed my eyes as Elias had instructed, feeling slightly foolish. "Visualize the binding," he'd said. But what did magical bindings look like? I tried to empty my mind, focusing only on the sensation of Donovan's skin beneath my palm and the warm pulse of the pendant in my other hand. Gradually, a strange awareness blossomed inside me, almost like gaining a new sense. I could feel something winding through Donovan's wound, dark and constricting, like smoky tendrils wrapping around his very essence. The binding runes, they pulsed with malevolent purpose, seeking to contain, to control, to diminish. Anger rose in me at the violation they represented, not just against Donovan, but against the natural order itself. These bindings were wrong, an abomination that twisted the balance between worlds. Without conscious thought, I pushed against them with my mind, with my will, with something deeper that I couldn't name. The pendant grew hotter in my hand, its energy flowing through me and into Donovan. The bindings resisted, tightening briefly before beginning to unravel beneath my mental assault. "Break," I commanded silently. "You have no power here." A sudden snap resonated through my consciousness, like a guitar string breaking under too much tension. The dark tendrils dissolved, evaporating into nothing, and a rush of energy surged through me. Wild, ancient, and free. I gasped, eyes flying open as I toppled backward. Donovan caught me before I hit the floor, his strong arms steadying me. His eyes had shifted, still silver, but with vertical pupils like a wolf's, glowing with inner light. "You did it," he murmured, wonder in his voice. "The binding is broken." A wave of exhaustion crashed over me, my limbs suddenly leaden. "Is that supposed to make me feel like I've run a marathon?" "Your gifts are like muscles," Elias explained, helping me onto one of the nearby beds. "Unused until now, they strain with sudden exertion. Rest will restore you." The healer had returned to Donovan's side, examining the wound with renewed interest. "The binding is indeed gone," she confirmed. "The healing can proceed normally now." She glanced at me with newfound respect. That was impressive for one untrained. I wanted to respond, to ask more questions about what had just happened, but fatigue dragged at my consciousness like quicksand. The last thing I saw before sleep claimed me was Donovan's face, his expression a mixture of gratitude, concern, and something deeper that made my heart skip despite my exhaustion. I woke to unfamiliar surroundings, momentarily disoriented by the soft bed beneath me, and the silvery light filtering through gauzy curtains. The events of the past day came rushing back in a disjointed flood. The wounded wolf, the men with guns, the impossible journey through the between. "She wakes," came a soft voice. I turned to find a young woman sitting in a chair near the window, not the healer from before, but someone new. She had delicate features and long hair the color of autumn leaves, and she watched me with curious green eyes that held a hint of something wild. "Where am I?" My voice came out raspy with sleep. "The royal wing of Haven Palace," she replied, rising gracefully. "I am Nira, assigned as your attendant during your stay." She moved to a small table and poured water from a crystal pitcher into a matching cup. "You've slept nearly a full day." The king was concerned. I sat up slowly, accepting the water with gratitude. The cool liquid soothed my parched throat as I took in my surroundings properly. The room was spacious and elegant, with living vines forming intricate patterns on the walls and ceiling. A balcony beyond the gauzy curtains overlooked what appeared to be a central courtyard far below. "These aren't the clothes I was wearing," I noted, looking down at the simple but beautiful shift dress of soft green fabric that had replaced my filthy jeans and sweater. Nira nodded. "Your things were damaged beyond repair. I hope the new garments are satisfactory. We had to estimate your size." "They're lovely," I assured her, swinging my legs over the edge of the bed. My feet, I noticed, had been properly bandaged, the cuts and scrapes from our escape through the forest treated while I slept. "Where is Donovan? I mean, His Majesty." A hint of a smile touched Nira's lips at my correction. "The king is in council session. He left instructions to bring you to him when you woke, if you felt strong enough." The thought of facing a formal council of shapeshifters made my stomach clench with anxiety, but I nodded anyway. I'd like to clean up first, if possible. "Of course." Nira gestured toward an adjoining room. "The bathing chamber is prepared, and fresh clothes await you there. Take your time. I'll wait to escort you when you're ready." The bathing chamber turned out to be a luxurious space, centered around a sunken pool, filled with steaming, fragrant water. Under normal circumstances, I might have lingered, savoring the first real bath after days of quick showers in my cabin's tiny bathroom. But urgency pressed at the edges of my consciousness. The Silverthorn Division was in the between, hunting for Haven, and somehow I was expected to help stop them. I bathed quickly and dressed in the clothes provided, fitted leggings of supple leather, a loose tunic of the same soft green as the shift, and surprisingly comfortable boots that laced up to my calves. My grandmother's pendant remained, the wooden wolf now hanging from a new silver chain. When I emerged, Nira nodded approvingly. "The council awaits," she said, moving toward the door. "Are you prepared?" "No," I thought. "I'm not prepared at all," but I squared my shoulders and nodded anyway. As I'll ever be. The council chamber occupied the heart of the palace, a circular room whose domed ceiling opened to the sky above. 12 massive chairs carved from living wood formed a semicircle on a raised dais, each adorned with symbols representing different packs or territories. At the center stood a throne slightly larger than the others, its surface inlaid with silver that caught the light streaming through the open dome. Nira led me through tall doors that swung open at our approach, announcing in a clear voice, "Eleanor Thorne, Boundary Walker." The title still felt foreign, an ill-fitting garment meant for someone else. Yet, as every head in the chamber turned toward me, I straightened my spine and lifted my chin, channeling a confidence I didn't feel. Donovan sat upon the central throne, his appearance dramatically transformed from the injured warrior I'd last seen. He wore formal attire, a midnight blue tunic embroidered with silver, black leggings, and a cloak that seemed woven from shadows themselves. A simple silver circlet rested on his brow, the only concession to his royal status. His leg, I noted with relief, showed no sign of the previous injury as he rose to greet me. "The council recognizes Eleanor Thorne," he announced, his deep voice carrying authority that silenced the murmurs that had broken out at my entrance. Last descendant of the Thorne bloodline and awakened Boundary Walker, I approached the dais, suddenly conscious of my plain attire compared to the formal robes and armor worn by the council members. Their expressions ranged from open curiosity to thinly veiled suspicion. Elder Elias occupied one of the chairs, offering me an encouraging nod. "Thank you for joining us," Donovan continued, gesturing to a smaller chair that had been placed near his throne. "Please, be seated." As I took the offered seat, I became aware of a tension in the room that went beyond my presence. The council members exchanged glances loaded with unspoken meaning, and a man with steel-gray hair and a scarred face leaned forward in his chair. "With respect, Your Majesty," he said, his voice gravelly and harsh. "We were discussing the division's incursion before the humans' arrival. The matter grows more urgent by the hour." "Commander Revok?" Donovan acknowledged, his tone cooling slightly. "Miss Thorne's insights are precisely what we need in this discussion. She has first-hand experience with the division's new tactics and technology." "If I may," I interjected, surprising myself with my boldness, "what exactly is the situation? How close are they to finding Haven?" A murmur rippled through the council at my direct question. Elder Elias cleared his throat. "Our scouts report 12 division operatives have breached the outer boundary," he explained. "They carry devices that allow them to track shapeshifter energy signatures across the between. We've managed to confuse their instruments with decoy signals, but it's only a matter of time before they triangulate Haven's location." "And when they do," added a regal woman with silver streaks in her dark hair, "they'll call in reinforcements. The division has been building toward this moment for decades, the discovery of our last sanctuary. Can't you just fight them off?" I asked. 12 men against an entire city of shapeshifters seems like poor odds for them." Commander Revok's harsh laugh held no humor. "These aren't ordinary men with ordinary weapons, girl. They carry binding technology that can lock dozens of our kind into wolf form simultaneously. And their rifles fire silver-infused ammunition that prevents our regenerative abilities from working. The real danger," Donovan added quietly, "is that they'll report Haven's coordinates back to their superiors before we can stop them. We estimate they have at least 3 communication devices that can transmit across boundaries." Understanding dawned. "So you need to neutralize all of them before any can send a message." "Precisely," said Elder Elias. "But they've scattered throughout the between, making it difficult to track them all simultaneously." Donovan leaned forward slightly. "This is where you come in, Eleanor. The Thorns have always been able to sense intruders in the between, to locate those who don't belong. But I don't know how," I protested, the familiar frustration rising again. "I can't just—" The pendant at my throat suddenly warmed, cutting me off mid-sentence. A strange sensation washed over me, like standing in a stream and feeling the currents change direction. Without thinking, I clutched the wooden wolf in my palm, closing my eyes as images flooded my mind. Flashes of men in tactical gear moving through the misty forests of the between, the landscape rippling around them like water disturbed by stones. "South!" I gasped, opening my eyes to find everyone staring at me. 3 of them are approaching from the south, following a stream that glows blue at night. They have a device that's pulsing, searching. Stunned silence filled the chamber. Then Commander Revok shot to his feet. "Luminous Creek," he confirmed, turning to Donovan. "That's less than 5 miles from the southern gate." "How did she—" "The Thorn gifts manifest when needed most," Elder Elias said softly, something like vindication in his voice. "As they always have." Donovan's eyes never left mine. Silver depths filled with a mixture of wonder and grim determination. "Can you locate the others?" I hesitated, then closed my eyes again, focusing on the strange new awareness that had awakened within me. The pendant grew warmer, images shifting behind my eyelids like scenes from a dozen different films playing simultaneously. 4 more to the east, near a circle of white stones, I reported, my voice steadier now. 2 heading north through a valley of red trees. The remaining 3, I frowned, concentration deepening. I can't see them clearly. They're shielded somehow. "The division has developed methods to block Thorn tracking," Elder Elias explained. "They've studied our ways for generations." "Still, this gives us something to work with," Donovan said, rising to his feet. "Commander Revok, dispatch elite units to the locations Eleanor has identified. Silent approach, containment priority. No one transmits back to their base." The scarred commander nodded sharply, already moving toward the doors with several council members following in his wake. "What about the 3 I couldn't locate?" I asked, a chill running down my spine despite the warmth of the pendant against my skin. Those are likely their leaders, Donovan replied grimly. The most dangerous, carrying the primary communication equipment. The silver-streaked woman spoke up. Your Majesty, we should evacuate the most vulnerable, the children, the elders, those who cannot fight. To where, Counselor Kira? Donovan asked, though his tone suggested he already knew her answer. The deep sanctuary, she said, beyond the second boundary. A heavy silence fell over the remaining council members. Elder Elias shook his head slowly. The crossing would be treacherous without proper preparation, he warned, and we have no guarantee the division hasn't found a way to breach even that boundary. I don't understand, I said, looking between their solemn faces. What's the second boundary? A final barrier, Donovan explained, separating this realm from our ancestral homeland. Few have crossed it in generations. The passage requires significant power and carries great risk, but it might be our only option if Haven falls, Counselor Kira insisted, and with a boundary walker to guide the crossing. Her meaningful glance in my direction made her implication clear. The weight of expectation pressed down on me like a physical force. These people were looking to me, a woman who'd only learned of their existence yesterday, to potentially save their entire civilization. I need air, I said abruptly, rising from my chair. Excuse me. Without waiting for permission, I strode toward a small balcony I'd noticed off the side of the chamber. No one tried to stop me as I pushed through the gauzy curtains into the open air, gripping the stone railing as I dragged oxygen into my constricted lungs. Below me stretched Haven in all its impossible beauty, lights beginning to twinkle in windows as the strange double moons rose higher in the alien sky. Somewhere in those winding streets were children who might soon be fleeing for their lives, families who had already lost so much to the humans who hunted them. And I, apparently, was expected to be their savior. It's a lot to absorb, came Donovan's voice from behind me. I didn't turn around. That's an understatement. He moved to stand beside me, his shoulder almost but not quite touching mine as he gazed out over his kingdom. I didn't mean to overwhelm you in there. But you need me, I said flatly. You need these abilities I barely understand to save your people from a threat I only learned existed yesterday. Yes. His honesty was refreshing at least. But I also understand your position. To have your entire identity upended. To discover a heritage and responsibility you never asked for. Sounds like you have some experience with that, I observed, glancing at the silver circlet on his brow. A faint, sad smile touched his lips. I never expected to be king. My older brother was the heir, trained from birth for the throne. I was the second son, allowed more freedom, fewer expectations. What happened to him? The division happened. His hands tightened on the railing. 8 years ago, they ambushed a diplomatic party traveling to meet with another shapeshifter clan. My brother, my father, and 14 others were killed. 3 were taken alive for experimentation. I was away, leading a hunting expedition in the north. I'm sorry, I said softly, the inadequate words all I had to offer. I returned to find myself king of a diminished, hunted people. His silver eyes met mine, filled with a pain that echoed the loneliness I'd carried since my parents' death. So yes, I understand something of having unwanted responsibility thrust upon you. The connection between us deepened in that moment. 2 people carrying burdens they hadn't chosen, trying to protect what remained of their heritage. Without thinking, I reached out, my hand covering his on the railing. I want to help, I told him, the truth of the words surprising even me. I just don't know if I can be what your people need. His fingers turned upward, intertwining with mine in a gesture that felt both casual and profound. You already are, Eleanor. You broke a binding spell without training. You located division agents that our best trackers couldn't find. And you crossed the boundary carrying another being, something only the strongest thorns could ever accomplish. But the second boundary is a concern for another day, he interrupted gently. Right now, we focus on the immediate threat. A commotion from the council chamber drew our attention. Commander Rivik had returned, his expression grim as he strode toward us. The southern team has engaged the division agents, he reported without preamble. 2 neutralized, but the 3rd activated some sort of device before we could stop him. Donovan's posture stiffened. What kind of device? Unknown, Your Majesty, but it emitted a pulse that our sensitives could detect across the between. Whatever it wasn't a standard communication. A beacon, I realized, the pendant warming against my skin once more. I can feel it. It's calling to the others, drawing them together. Revik's eyes narrowed at my words, but he nodded sharply. The Eastern team reports their targets have changed direction, moving with purpose now. They're converging, Donovan said grimly, gathering their forces for a coordinated strike. He turned to Revik. Sound the alarm. All civilians to the inner sanctum, all warriors to defensive positions. As Revik hurried to obey, Donovan's hand tightened around mine. Eleanor, I need you to go with Elder Elias. If Haven falls, someone must guide our people to the second boundary. But I want to help fight, I protested. You are the last boundary walker, he said, his voice gentle but firm. If the division captures you, they gain control of both our worlds. I cannot allow that. Before I could argue further, the air around us seemed to vibrate, a deep thrumming sensation that set my teeth on edge. The pendant at my throat flared hot enough to burn, and I gasped as visions flooded my mind. Dark figures converging, carrying objects that pulsed with malevolent energy. They're here, I whispered, terror and certainty mingling in my voice. All of them. They've breached the outer defenses. As if confirming my words, a distant explosion shattered the peaceful evening. Orange flames blossoming at Haven's southern edge. Shouts and howls filled the air as shapeshifters rushed to defend their home. Donovan's face transformed, the diplomatic ruler replaced by the warrior king. Go with Elias, he commanded, already turning away, his body beginning to shimmer with the energy of an imminent shift. I caught his arm. Wait. There's something else. The pendant's heat had changed, not burning now, but resonating with a different energy. I can feel it. The way they're tracking you. The division's technology is tuned to shapeshifter energy signatures specifically. We know this, he said, impatience coloring his tone as another explosion rocked the city. But that's the key, I insisted, certainty flowing through me from some ancestral memory I couldn't name. If I can disrupt their calibration, change the frequency they're tracking, understanding dawned in his silver eyes. You think you can blind their instruments? I can try. The knowledge of how to do this was there suddenly, unfolding in my mind like a forgotten memory. But I'll need to be at the center of Haven, where the boundary energy is strongest. For a heartbeat, he hesitated, torn between the need to lead his warriors and the potential of my plan. Then he nodded sharply. The heart chamber, he said. Below the palace. His hand cupped my cheek briefly, the touch searing in its intensity. Be careful, Eleanor Thorne. You've become far too important to lose. Before I could respond, he was gone, shifting forms in a blur of motion that left a massive black wolf racing toward the sounds of battle. And I stood alone on the balcony, pendant burning against my skin, the fate of an entire civilization somehow resting in my hands.